Okay, Jai Hind, everybody. Today you will be exposed to a very, very interesting subject, and it is something which actually must be a field of deliberation. You would have seen as to how Pakistan was hammered during Operation Sindoor, and we, despite being the victors, are struggling through the narrative warfare started by them. They not only promoted their chief of army staff to the appointment of chief of defense forces, but today the kind of proximity he has got with the United States of America and the Trump administration, he is the one who is being depended lonely in the entire world to break the deadlock between the Iran and US at this moment. In fact, he is about to travel to Tehran today, as per the media news, and there are reports that the deal is very close. So whether that happens or doesn't happen, but Pakistan, despite its adversities, challenges, thought process, polity, has been able to come out of that to a reasonable extent. Even so much so that when one of the countries from the Middle East demanded their loan money to be returned, because Pakistan is known to be surviving on the loan and grant money. So there were other two who actually joined hands to give them more money. So it's an interesting case. While one argument could be he's trying to sell the mineral wealth of Pakistan, especially in the Balochistan province. People may also relate it to the cryptocurrency deal which he is doing and benefiting the family members of Trump. But whatever the case, I think this is an area which will need to be analyzed. We may have difference of opinion, but we must think through as to how a country, a leader, or a defense person who was nowhere has become in the core thinking domain of the world, leave aside India. So we are very fortunate that today we have General D.P. Pandey, who is expert on this subject, and we are looking for some candid views by him, and I'm sure he will be able to bring out number of aspects as to how Pakistan has transitioned from being a failed state to its current profile. So without much ado on that, I'll request Deepak Tiwari to introduce the speaker, followed by I'll request the speaker to please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Lieutenant General D.P. Pandey is a highly distinguished veteran who served the nation for over 42 years. For his exceptional service, the President of India honored him with the top military decorations, including Param Vishist Seva Medal, Uttam Yuddha Seva Medal, Ati Vishist Seva Medal, and Vishist Seva Medal. A veteran of operations like Vijay and Parakram, he served 7 combat tours in Kashmir and notably led the world famous Chennaur Corps, driving transformative peace and stability in the valley. He also served on UN missions in Cambodia, headed the Army Strategic Communication Division, and retired as a commandant of the Army War College. Academically inclined, he holds master's degree from Chennai University and the National Defense University, Washington, D.C., USA, alongside an MPhil from NDC, New Delhi. Today, Lieutenant General Pandey is a prominent strategic analyst, think tank advisor, and author of nearly 50 published articles and papers and a book, Reflection on Strategy. A massive digital influencer and TEDx speaker, his 200 plus podcast appearances have garnered millions of views, making him a powerful, sought-after voice on leadership, national security, and youth motivation. Thank you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Deepak, and thank you, sir. And firstly, let me put something in the very start that I am not an expert on Pakistan, because it is a very, very complex society, country, an artificial country. I think the world is trying to understand and manage that country. So anybody who will have a view which comes from their perspectives, how they have seen this country. So today, sir, what I'll do is that I will cover this topic in slightly more different manner, bringing out something which is known but also from a different perspective of unknowns. So let me just start with commenting upon the topic itself. Pakistan's hybrid model of governance from being a failed state to becoming relevant. So firstly, I must share with you that it is not a hybrid model of the governance because of which Pakistan has found itself in the particular condition where it is. And I will discuss the model still with you all. But Pakistan, I feel, is a fragile state, was never a failed state. While we all may like to believe there's a failed state, is just near the abyss, a little nudge and it'll fall over apart. This is a wishful thinking from the Indian community because we possibly don't like Pakistan for what it is being doing to us. But unfortunately for us or people like me, it just remains on the fragile status and is not yet a failed state. It will take some time and effort, not only by India, but actually by the world powers to ensure that Pakistan does not exist. And there's a very strong point I'm saying as a geography, because as long as continues to exist, the region and the world will never be at peace because, and I can answer this in the question answer session. The second is it has always been relevant. Unfortunately, we see the relevance in a very microscopic or in a time limited manner. But when you look at even from pre-independence time, the idea of Pakistan had already germinated by somebody else from outside the region, and it has remained relevant always for one country or other country. It is about how we perceive, how directly it is threatening us. And this new phenomenon is nothing very out of normal. It is very standard. When you look at the graph over last about 70 to 80 years, you'll find some degree of truth which I am talking of. I must firstly just open up this idea in which a lot of people, especially the Britishers, don't like to accept it. Pakistan actually was not created by the Muslims of United Province. There were talks, there were discussions, but it was actually created by the Britishers for variety of reasons, and I'll talk about it later. So I will cover this topic in three broad parts, and I'll try and finish it in about 40-45 minutes and maybe earlier, because I find the question answers may get much more better response than a formalized talk. The first part I will talk about is what are the components of its hybrid governance, and that will explain to you what are the challenges and how it has evolved over a period of time when one part of the governance was stronger and thereafter has ceded power to somebody else over a period of time and who's on the overwash. This second part I will also speak about why Pakistan has always been relevant. It is more about geography and conditions which have been ongoing in this region. The third I will talk about is this issue which people have been talking of, that has this current role of mediation, is success or failure, is going to have any dynamical change or relevance, and more so to India. And about India, I will, if I have time, I'll talk about it or I'll take it in the question answer session. So while people may not like it, because structurally, when you look at a nation or a country, we look at verticals of institutions which operate in synergy. Pakistan is a very unique country. Pakistan has got layered systems of governance in which each of them communicate to each other or grow in relevance, power based on time, situation, who's able to harness the fourth dimension of governance, which I'll talk about later. And these are briefly, the components are basically, the first is, we all know, is the military establishment, right? That's the most powerful, most enduring part, and I'll speak about it in much more detail. The second is the civilian, political, and feudal lord concept, which I'll talk about it in much more detail. The third is the religious, political, and the Islamist networks, which has been the product initially of the political establishment, then of the military establishment, and has taken roots in a very great, strong manner that it will be very, very difficult for this to be actually uprooted or changed for some time to come. It will require a lot of time to actually change. But the last one, which we don't talk in part of the governance, the layer which I feel is the most important part, which is central to the stability, instability, relevance, irrelevance, is the external influence. So very strange when I add this fourth layer, and I'll discuss how this has become part of the governance, hybrid governance, and how it controls the overall destiny of Pakistan, failed, fragile, stable, or relevant, irrelevant. So let's come out with the first. Very quickly, I'll cover this about the military establishment, which is the most powerful. Pakistan military has got Air Force, Navy as a component, but by the way, they are irrelevant in the Pakistani scheme of things. There's a Pakistani military in which Pakistan Army has got a central role, and of which the ISI actually is the most powerful arm. Somewhere in the 1970s, it became so powerful that it plays a very central role, not only for Pakistan, but for the Gulf state, for the West Asia region, and also for the five eyes of the CIA and rest of the country which are involved. And I will again talk about it, how it has remained relevant. The key institutions are Pakistan Army, ISI, the GHQ headquarters, but more importantly, just remember in this game, the core commanders play a very, very significant role, because from the core commanders, the leverages start on the country. They have to be on the same page, not as a majority, but as a universal one voice. And this is ensured either through blackmailing, somebody who doesn't come about, if you recall, GOC 4 Corps was taken out and sacked and put behind bars as under court-martial, because he didn't open fire on the PTI protesters who entered their complexes, and he refused to fire upon them. So they need to be as one voice of Pakistan military along with the ISI. The other part, I think, the influence of Pakistan military is not only in defense, but if you look at it, there are economics, real estate, media influence, judiciary, political engineering, and also the most important part is the strategic narrative. How to talk, what to talk with the world, within the country, is totally controlled, dominated by Pakistani military. And you can see it on their channels or YouTubes or conversations which happen. They virtually speak on a toolkit system in which the media has to voice whatever they are speaking on the various platforms. Why did Pakistan military gain significance? So, a lot of time people say it was about India, larger power, and therefore they gain rooted. I have got a different view. I have written about it in some article earlier as well. You see, even in the initial stages, Pakistan military was not central power structure, right? But what happened is somewhere in the 1950s, early 1950s, after the partition, this new country, while it adopted Islam as a binding factor, Islam also was not a very preeminent element in the scene. They wanted to remain secular, modern Pakistan, and if you recall, somewhere in the early mid 60s, Pakistan economy was doing fairly okay. It was way ahead of the Indian socialist form of economy and was much more powerful even in the terms of military terms. In 1950s, the corruption, and that is where the feudal lord concept comes in. The power in Pakistan never devolved to the people of Pakistan. It remained controlled by the old feudalistic lord system, which they use Islam to remain relevant and control large tract of population. So if you look at Bhutto family, or you look at Shahi family, or you look at large number of people who have huge tracts of land, they remain powerful not only in the politics, they also remain powerful in the military, judiciary, bureaucracy. Common people don't have any say. But then they became immensely corrupt. And that is a time when these generals who came about somewhere in the middle 50s, who had been trained in the Western world, in America, in UK, and they wanted to see the country truly growing. They actually stepped in, and that is where Ayub Khan came into reckoning. And then somewhere, when Ayub Khan realized that possibly he may not be able to control the system, and that is the time he usurped the power and became the chief martial administrator or dictator or whatever. Then thereafter he became the president of Pakistan. So in case they had not gone off the ramp in 1965, possibly uh, the Pakistani military's control would have been towards a positive influence, but somewhere they went off, and then I'll talk about it later. So they came in, and that is the time when this reforms was done by Ayub Khan and his coterie of people, which are positive, which are empowering people. The country started reforming and becoming better, and that is the first stage when the population of Pakistan started respecting the Pakistani military. It was not later on or before that. And since then, the the destiny of Pakistan has remained linked to Pakistan military over a period of time. So, but unfortunately, what happens is that once, and that is what a lot of people talk to me and my fans on social media and all say, that Indian military must take over the country and rule the country. And I always feel that that will be the baddest idea, because total power corrupts absolutely. And that is what happened to Pakistan military. When you look at in last about 78, 79 years of its existence, the direct control of Pakistan military as top leadership, as chief martial law administrator or dictator or a president, the president rule has been about 33 years, right? Which is virtually 50%. But when you look at the proxy government, like today's Shahbaz Sharif government is a proxy government, which has been planted by the Pakistan military. Even Imran Khan's government was for, it survived 5 years only because of the support of the Pakistani army, and he followed what the Pakistani army said. And that is why, so when you look at it, the total years which I have calculated and I have written again in one of the papers is about 56 to 57 years. So nearly 70% of the time, Pakistan military has been in the control of Pakistan as a direct or indirect manner, right? So one may say anything, while they may be the cause of trouble, instability, or what fragility, but they have continued to remain even today the most stabilizing force of the country. And if I look at it, if the politicians had come into play, they would have surely continued to ruin this country and may not have survived the way it has survived. But Pakistan military has ensured that the country has remained as an entity for whatever wrong they have done. But they have used different strategic tools to continue to bind the country. Like when Zia came, he realized the fractures were coming up, and that is why he introduced Islam in a big manner. He used the concept of strategic depth and interference into Afghanistan to bind the country and change the discourse of the country after Bhutto. Famously, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto actually famously failed. The country got divided again in 1971 and would have further divided in case Ziaul Haq had not done, Zia had not done what he did. So I will talk of the second factor, the civilian, political, and feudal lord-driven structure. So are they distinct from Pakistan military? No, because Pakistan military also enjoys complete power. These people who are traditionally very, very powerful people, the tribal leaders or leaders of the respective lands or the feudal lords, actually came into the bureaucracy, into civil and political structure. They also joined the judiciary. A common man did not have any chance to actually come about into an open competition and be able to be a political lead. So if you look at it, all their leaders are erstwhile large tract of land owners, and that is how they have remained relevant. So while it may be a constitution pillar, the political system, but it remains often subordinate to variety of factors which are prevailing in this thing, but we'll still discuss about it. The civilian political structure actually comprises of prime minister, parliament, cabinet, provincial governments, the bureaucracy, the political parties. And we all know there are three prominent political parties, the PML, PPP, PTI, and PTI has become currently very, very strong, but yet it remains on the sideline because the support Pakistan military has given to the Shahbaz Sharif government. This political leadership after 1950s, early 1960s, has actually operated within the laid down norms of the Pakistan military. So virtually all matters which are external in terms of relationships, everything is guided by the Pakistan military. If you recall, Nawaz Sharif came with a second mandate, which is virtually about 75 to 80% votes, and the seats in parliament had come to Nawaz Sharif. And when Mr. Vajpayee reached out to Nawaz Sharif for for the regional peace, that is the time Musharraf came into being. He had already started Operation Kopaima or Operation Badr, whatever you may call it, from whichever perspective. He launched this operation to ensure that this Sheikh Hand should not become a regional peace. So Pakistan military was actually not inclined towards the regional peace because the entity of survival of Pakistan military had thereafter become entrenched onto an anti-India narrative, which is very, very important. Right. So that is how the Pakistan military has continued to manage the external matters of Pakistan. But yet they have certain degree of freedom in terms of economic management, taking the blame for all what is going wrong in Pakistan, the welfare, taxation, the administrative governance. But in various crises, these are also constrained by Pakistan military. I must just recall, and I'll just put it into the post. Last year, the Pakistan army, the Pakistani military asked for a 25% increase in the budgetary allocation for Pakistani military. And Pakistan did not have money. Virtually imagine 1/4 of the money of the budget is going not for institutional reforms or the structural reforms of Pakistan, but goes to Pakistani military, of which majority of it would have gone to China, to the external operators, and nothing would have remained, and the rest would have gone to corruption. So that is how they were able to influence even the current budget, which is ongoing. Pakistan military has again asked for 25% of the budget to be allocated to the Pakistani military, and the IMF is now contesting. But if you look at it, last year also IMF had contested, but they couldn't do much about it because they had this influence to ensure that money came about to the Pakistani military. But again, even in the civil, political, bureaucratic structures, institutions, most of them are actually led and controlled by the retired generals, colonels, brigadiers of Pakistani military. And then that is one lure for everybody who's serving in the Pakistani military, that once you retire and you are following the strategic direction of the Pakistan military, your post-retirement plan is in your pocket. And if you don't, you will go to economy. So this is how a lure inbreeding cycle continues to remain to make the country fragile. The third is, and which came into relevance, actually not during partition or during Pakistan's creation, carving out from India, but somewhere in the 70s, is the religious, political, and Islamist network. Right? This is the ideological mobilization pillar of Pakistan, which keeps Pakistan bound. In fact, today, when you listen to a common Pakistani talking, he is so subsumed by the idealism of the Islam that he just can't think anything about being a modern state, while they desire to be modern in terms of what the Western world has, but it just simply can't shift to becoming an acts in performance, to leave the religious moorings, which has been now in the Pakistani society for 5 decades. So 5 decades of madrasa education, 5 decades of religious teaching, can change generations forever, right? And that has been done in an institutional manner when Zia came into power, and he ensured that the Pakistani military, which was technically secular, very modern in the thinking, also started growing beards in their stomach. So I was in Cambodia in my UN mission, and my there were Pakistani colleagues who should tell that so and so is guy who's got beard. He looks clean shaven, but he's got a beard in his stomach. That means he's hardline, right? And be aware or be safe from him. That is the kind of conversation which I'm talking of is in 1993. You can well imagine what is the condition today. The top leadership of Pakistan military today had joined forces as cadets in the Ziaul Haq regime. And if you know the DGISPR, his father was a hardline Islamist. He was virtually a terrorist. And Asim Munir is known for his radical thoughts, and you all must have heard about it. So this religious political Islamist network is also a very important player. Each of the political parties align with one or other political religious organization. They draw the support, they get the votes through them, and they ensure that they remain relevant. And that is where at times the conflict also happens with the country. But the Pakistani military ensures the levers are controlled with each and every one of these religious organizations. If you recall, a few months back, in the protest for Imran Khan, one of the religious organizations had come. Their top leadership was on the payroll of ISI, right? But when somewhere they stepped out of the line, almost everybody went behind the bars. They killed about 1,000 people on the streets of Islamabad, and not in a single word was uttered in the Pakistani political realm, in the media, and also in the world. And the reason you're well aware, and I'll talk of it about a little later, right? So that is how the Pakistani, again, just remember the relevance of the political parties and the connect of the religious, the terrorist infrastructure and Operation Sindoor. Once this happened, and if you recall, there were body bags of the terrorist line. The Pakistani military came for first time overtly with the generals and senior officers coming to pay respect at the time of the burial to those bodies. In fact, burials were led by the Pakistani military. Eventually, the political parties were not wanting to come and associate with the terrorist death. But after a couple of weeks, if you recall, the banners started coming about with the political leadership also openly associating with the terrorist tanzeems like Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed and others. And those banners along with the Pakistani military and these terrorist leaders started coming out, and then the directions were given to the politicians that you will participate, start moving outly and show that you are one with the Islamist networks. And if you recall, last about 2-3 months, there has been a very overt meetings, publicity, shaking of hands, interactions which are videographed and put out onto social media to showcase that the Pakistani military, the political parties, and the Islamist networks are on the same page when it comes to managing of the country. There are a number of terms which are used for them, and this called religious establishment, clerical establishment, Islamist network, mullah military nexus. There are a number of literature on this subject. But what do they provide to the Pakistani society as such as an ideological legitimacy, street mobilization, and strategic depth narratives, anti-India sentiments, and a recruitment ecosystem, which is very important for Pakistan because they need to have recruits to carry out their missions, which are not only internal, but not only external, but also internal. And that is how the Pakistani military or the Pakistani political establishment have used these religious bodies not only to carry out terror acts or influence population outside, but more importantly, to control their own people one way or other. Most important pillar is the next one, and that is called, I call it as external power influence. The Pakistani strategic direction, how much ever Pakistani military, political masters, even the religious ideologues may say, has been driven by external influence. And it comes how it was created. It was created by the Britishers. And I think everybody who's listening to my talk will be fully aware why was it recreated, why was it created. And I'll very, very quickly just talk of a little bit about this thing. Eventually, I talk of it after a little time, you know. So what has happened is when it got created, it was created by the Britishers for certain purpose. But as Britishers, and not only Britishers, if you recall, the US somewhere in 1950s started 40s and 50s started compelling the various colonial powers like France and Spain, Portuguese, and Britishers to stop becoming colonial powers and give independence, because America wanted to now replace the colonial powers as a preeminent, predominant player in the world. And whatever the Britishers thought about the relevance of Pakistan was absorbed in totality, and not only about Pakistan, the rest of the country which got independence. Every strategic thought which was there in the mind of the erstwhile colonial masters became embedded in the US psyche. And unfortunately, we continue to reinforce that over a period of time, and I'll talk about it a little later. So it's shifted in terms of Pakistan. It shifted from UK to United States. Then somewhere in the 70s, when the petrodollar and the Gulf countries, especially Saudis, Qatar, Kuwait, become extremely powerful, and that money started flowing in 1970s, the Gulf countries became the second influential element in the geopolitical existence of Pakistan. And then came somewhere around when the global war on terror was launched by US, and that is the time the US, after having achieved its Cold War aims, shifted its gaze and put Pakistan onto the chopping block, saying that they have been supporting the global terror, and they now need to come with the Americans against the terror which has been actually started by the Pakistanis on the funds of the Gulf and on the training and direction of the Americans. So there was a period of a decade in which there was a flux. Where should Pakistan go? And then very, very smartly, slowly, they realized the rising power of China. And by the way, Kissinger was urged by the Pakistanis that they need to shake hands and exploit the Chinese potential of manufacturing towards their advantage. And they were the ones who were a bridge between US, China, and that is where actually the Americans failed to see the long-term impact, the fourth order effect of the China rising, and they will be coming to compete with the Americans. And so that is a story I can talk about sometime later. So eventually they shifted the focus to China. But I will just tell you that how smart their strategic leadership has been. The Pakistanis in 1960, early 60s, and I don't remember the exact year, once we got actually, we went for the war with the Chinese, they realized the power of the Chinese, the might of Chinese. That is the time they gave in the Aksai Chin part very, very overtly. They gave the Shaksgam Valley to the Chinese, which was not their own. And if you read the literature of that time, the investment of the Pakistanis in 1960s became a driving force for. So they give it out of fear against the China, but they also give it against due to the hatred towards India. And that investment became a bridge and a calling point with the Chinese. And today, in last 2-3 years or 4 years, the Pakistanis have pivoted again from Pakistan back to from China back to America. And I'll explain to you a little later. I think I got about 10 odd minutes to still go. So while just about last about a decade or so, with the CPEG, the BRI project, the investment of about $65 billion, of which the Chinese have already spent about $35 billion, this Pakistan became very, very relevant to the Chinese, and the Chinese influence became imperative for the Pakistan survival. And now again, in last about couple of years, they have pivoted back to the US. So I will just briefly summarize that the real power structure in this layered power structure, the military establishment is the one which forms the core. The civilian governments provide the constitutional legitimacy, not only within the country, but also for the outside world. The religious networks provide the ideological depth and mobilization, and the foreign patrons give the economic and the strategic sustenance. So you imagine a country which has become a rentier state because it requires the economic sustenance from outside, has continued to ensure that their structures which make a country stable in long term remain destabilized. Okay, so why does instability occur in Pakistan? When these four layers, they conflict at point of time. I'll give an example. Imran Khan was brought by the Pakistani military at the behest of CIA, right? Because he was most popular leader and people thought that he will become a great bridge and leverage, and he will not look towards China. But in the last 1 year, Imran Khan, the glamorous poster boy of Pakistan cricket and the Pakistani people, certainly started becoming too religious about his orientation. And he also started looking at the people first agenda, which was not suiting the obviously certain element. And he started looking at Russia. He visited Russia at the start of the Ukraine war. And he started talking openly against the Americans. And that is when, and if you recall in the region how the changes have happened, the changes in Nepal, the changes in Bangladesh, everywhere, wherever the changes have happened the moment you start going against the American interest or American establishment, you get replaced very quickly. And that is where the shake hand of Asim Munir, Nawaz Sharif, who was already staying abroad, happened. And this minority government was brought into as a proxy government, and Imran Khan was put behind bars. And that is how this external influences make huge impact on this thing. So when the friction happens, the friction also is the political friction or the relevance of Pakistan. I'll just go back quickly. You know, when Nawaz Sharif was there in the second this thing, was that time the chief. I'm forgetting his name. This guy spoke in the NDC about the relevance of Pakistan military, and very quickly he was removed from his chair. He was sent home 3 months earlier before his tenure was getting over. And Musharraf, who was supposed to be a player for Nawaz Sharif, was brought in. Right. So that is how, even when the political establishment and military establishment have a friction, that is time the country starts moving towards certain degree of instability. Why? So I don't agree that Pakistan relevance has started now. Why has Pakistan remained relevant always? And I'll quickly cover in just about a minute or two. It is all about geography, right? I can assure you that states can rise and acquire strategic value based on the economic and military strength. But it is the geography which makes a country, however small. Singapore is powerful not because of its military strength. It is about its location, right? It is a bridge where it's been able to harness that bridge to become the financial center of the world in 20th century. So that is how it is. So if they sit on the map where they connect or they obstruct or they influence or threaten, you look at Hormuz and Iran. The leverage of Hormuz has made IRGC, uh, a party into the play with US domination in the region, right? That leverage is there. So geography makes a huge. So what was the geography of Pakistan as a destiny? It came in at an intersection of Indian subcontinent, the Persian Gulf region, Central Asia, Western China. So when you look at from the Chinese prism, it allows an access to the Arabian Sea and to Indian Ocean. It allows you to assess the raw materials, the rare earth materials into Balochistan, into Afghanistan. When you look at from the prism of the US, it allows them to have a monitoring station into the Central Asian Republic. It allows you to see into the Russians, erstwhile into Soviet Union. It allows them to interfere into Afghanistan as a bridge, using Pakistan as a bridge to get into Afghanistan and roll back the Soviet Union influence. It allows them to also continue to look into China. But strangely, and people may not agree, but for both China and America today, Pakistan has become relevant to contain the rise of India. And you have to actually read between the talks which have emanated from the very, very important strategic players in America and China. I don't have to articulate this thing. So while British strategic logic of creation of Pakistan was Soviet Union centric, the socialism centric, that let not the socialist ideology come to India. Otherwise, a large demographic population will be influenced to an ideology which will be against the ideology of the West. Those times have gone and India has moved on to very balanced power, but yet the mindset continues to remain, which have been taken over by the Americans, which I have talked of earlier. So Pakistan has offered itself as a buffer state, right? For the American interest, for the Chinese, and for the influence and the counterbalancing. And they have encouraged it because this encouragement allows the Gulf to invest, Americans to give the relevance and the power which they require at the international stage. So when Pakistan behaves, IMF loan comes calling. If they don't behave, the IMF loan gets equated to what you call the gray list or the black list. So we all understand how it happens. So this is the reason how Pakistan had played. And I'll very quickly just talk about, is Pakistan a stable state or a failed state or fragile state? And I'll just simply state by making a line which I just wrote, is a fragile state teetering towards an abyss, but bailed out by external influences for the reason that it remains fragile. So what a contradiction. It has to remain fragile for the external influences to remain. And that is where the relevance of this country comes about. Because the moment this country has got its structures in place, a stability in place, this country will become irrelevant to the external powers influences. So unfortunately, the layered governance system has been exploited. The religious systems, networks have been exploited by the Gulf to ensure the rentierism continues towards the Gulf. And therefore, Pakistan military will continue to send thousands of its men, officers, pilots, including retired chief, to look after the western front of the Pakistan against Yemen, against the Houthis, and the trouble which comes from the Houthis to the Arabian interest, to the Saudi interest. I will not talk about this thing, but the issue which was said that is it towards stability? Please understand the stability is not in terms of relevance. And as I said, the relevance of Pakistan is in instability. But we need to look at its, the economic indicators. Today, virtually, as per their estimates, about 10% population is unemployed. But it is far more. The only thing which Pakistan is able to export is either terrorists or the beggars. And if you remember, virtually $30 billion industry is from the begging industry. So a country which prides itself into begging by the common people and which has been talked very openly. Their TikTokers joke about begging factor. Their top leadership has come out into the parliament and has said, Fawza has said, even Shahbaz has said, कि वो हम कटोरे लेकर के बाकी देशों में जाते हैं. So, when it has been established at the top level, there's a whole industry which moves into Saudi, into the Gulf countries, especially towards the time when Umrah is to be carried out, the Hajj happens, when the whole industry pans out of begging, which has been talked so much about the Saudis and others on this fight. So that is one facet we have to look. Virtually 25% of the children are out of school. So if they're out of school, 25 million, right? So you can well imagine the fate of this 25 million youth when they become seniors, their facet of employability, skills, how they are going to be used. So this is not a reflection of a stable state. It's a fragile state. The last part I'll just talk of, this is the only country which has defaulted 23 times to the IMF. Right. Today, it is taking loan to service loans. Doesn't have money and is using all sort of measures to create money or even this talk with Iran, by the way, is coming at cost. They are going to take money, and if I'm listening right, Iranians have promised them significant amount of funds in case the ceasefire is achieved the way they want, and so have the Americans, only to tide them over a period of time. But please understand, these are only tiding over because this money, when it will come, it will go to the corrupt areas, it will go to the black, it will empower the feudals and the military generals. This money will again go out of the country and not be invested into the structural reforms which are required. So it is surely not stable, is not going towards stability. Whatever relevance or irrelevance comes out, it is just a location which was very convenient for the Americans at that point of time, because Asim Munir had ensured conversations with IRGC leaders. He has ensured certain degree of intelligence is given to the Iranian state, which is known to the Americans. They have allowed the equipment from the Chinese to flow through to Iran, even during Operation Epic Fury and before and thereafter. You are fully aware that they have allowed the parking and safe parking of the pilots and the aircrafts in their own country. And by the way, it is all known to the Americans, right? Don't ever think it is not. So they have been able to use this argument to the Americans that we need to keep a channel open to the Iranians so that when you want a ceasefire, we are there to provide that facility for negotiation, right? So they have been able to use this time, but will this change anything towards stability? I don't think so, because if you know the Americans, you look at what happened to Yunus. The moment Yunus has left his relevance, he's gone back, he's out of sight, out of mind. And this is what has happened to Pakistan, will happen again, but then Pakistanis are smart. They will keep on pivoting from one donor to another, and they will continue to remain the rentier state what they are. Thank you so much.